Life moves pretty fast, but some secrets move faster. What if everything you thought you knew about Ferris Bueller's Day Off was a carefully constructed lie? Behind Matthew Broderick's charming grin lurked casting disasters, mechanical nightmares, and studio battles that nearly destroyed the film before it reached theaters. From Ferrari crashes that triggered insurance investigations to parade scenes that hijacked entire cities, this wasn't just another teen comedy. It was a production battlefield where friendships shattered, careers ended, and the most beloved day off in cinema history almost never happened. The truth about what really went down during filming has been buried for decades, but today we're exposing every shocking detail. Make sure you subscribe, because what you're about to discover will completely change how you see this classic forever. These aren't just behind-the-scenes stories, they're explosive revelations that Hollywood tried to keep secret. Here are 20 mind-blowing facts about Ferris Bueller's Day Off that will shatter everything you believed about this movie. But wait until you hear the bonus fact at the end. It involves a hidden alternate ending so dark that test audiences demanded their money back. Number 20. The Ferrari was actually cursed by its own mechanics. The replica Ferrari 250 GT California didn't just break down occasionally. It was mechanically possessed, refusing to start every single morning and terrorizing the crew with daily disasters that turned filming into automotive hell. Built with a real Ferrari wheelbase but powered by a Ford V8 engine instead of the proper V12, this mechanical Frankenstein created chaos that nearly shut down production multiple times. Mechanics worked through the night trying to keep the cursed machine running, while the cast developed genuine superstitions about even sitting in it between takes. The scene in which Ferris turns off the car to leave it with the garage attendant had to be shot a dozen times because it would not start. But the real nightmare went beyond simple mechanical failure. Engine fires erupted without warning, transmission systems collapsed mid-scene, and the electrical system seemed to have a malicious intelligence of its own. The crew started calling it Satan's Ferrari, and several mechanics quit rather than continue working on what they believed was genuinely cursed machinery. What should have been simple driving scenes became elaborate engineering challenges that consumed thousands in overtime fees. But the automotive nightmare was just the beginning of this production's troubles. Number 19. Anthony Michael Hall's refusal destroyed a legendary friendship. John Hughes built his entire teen movie empire around Anthony Michael Hall, crafting The Breakfast Club and 16 Candles specifically with the young actor in mind. When Hall rejected the chance to play Ferris Bueller, it wasn't just a casting decision. It was the creative betrayal that ended one of Hollywood's most productive partnerships and changed both their careers forever. Hughes felt abandoned by his muse at the moment of his greatest triumph, while Hall desperately wanted to escape the nerdy typecasting that was suffocating his range as an actor. The fallout was immediate and devastating. Hughes never spoke to Hall again, despite their previous closeness and collaborative success. Hall later admitted the decision haunted him for years, watching Matthew Broderick become a cultural icon in the role that could have defined his own career. The creative chemistry that had produced multiple classic films evaporated overnight, leaving both men to wonder what masterpieces they might have created together. Hughes poured his feelings of abandonment into every scene Broderick filmed, creating a Ferris that carried the ghost of his original vision. And that betrayal was only the first of many relationships this film would destroy. Number 18. Jeffrey Jones nearly got fired for refusing to be cruel. Principal Rooney actor Jeffrey Jones arrived on set with his own interpretation of the character as a sympathetic educator, genuinely concerned about student welfare. Hughes had a completely different vision, a petty tyrant whose obsession with catching Ferris revealed deep psychological problems. The creative clash escalated daily, with Jones refusing to play scenes as broadly as Hughes demanded, culminating in a two-day walkout that nearly destroyed the production. Jones felt the physical comedy crossed the line into cruelty and was professionally humiliated by increasingly ridiculous pratfalls that wasted his dramatic training. Hughes seriously considered recasting entirely, even auditioning replacements, while Jones held up in his hotel room and agents frantically negotiated. The resolution came when Jones agreed to trust Hughes's vision, but the experience left him bitter about the film's tone and his own participation in what he viewed as mean-spirited comedy. The tension between actor and director created an unintended psychological complexity in Rooney's character, making him simultaneously pathetic and threatening in ways that neither man had originally planned. This creative battle would pale in comparison to the insurance nightmare heading their way. Number 17. The Ferrari crash created an insurance investigation that nearly shut down Hollywood. When the replica Ferrari crashed through the garage window, car enthusiasts everywhere were inconsolable when that 1961 Ferrari GT skidded off the jack and plummeted to its death. But the real drama happened behind the cameras. Insurance investigators descended on the set, convinced that a $1 million authentic Ferrari had actually been destroyed rather than a carefully constructed replica. Production was halted for 3 days while investigators examined every piece of wreckage, interviewed crew members, and reviewed footage frame by frame to confirm the crash was staged rather than accidental. The insurance crisis became so severe that Lloyd's of London refused to cover any future Hughes productions involving expensive vehicles, effectively blacklisting one of Hollywood's most successful directors from certain types of filmmaking. The delay cost hundreds of thousands in overtime fees and location rental extensions, while the entire cast and crew sat helplessly waiting for corporate investigators to finish their forensic examination. Multiple replica cars had been built for different scenes, but the crash car was the most expensive and detailed version, creating a perfect storm of insurance paranoia and corporate liability fears. But this automotive disaster was nothing compared to the human cost of Hughes's obsessive directing style. Number 16. Cameron's character was John Hughes, processing his own depression in real time. Alan Ruck's haunting portrayal of Cameron Fry wasn't just acting, it was channeling Hughes's own battles with depression and anxiety that the director was processing through intensive therapy sessions. Hughes had spent months working through his fear of success and his complicated relationship with his own father, pouring all of that emotional turmoil directly into Cameron's character arc. The director became obsessively involved in Ruck's performance, often pulling the actor aside between takes to share intensely personal stories about his own mental health struggles and family trauma. The famous pool scene where Cameron stares catatonic into the water wasn't originally scripted. It emerged from an afternoon when Hughes broke down on set, describing his own moments of dissociation and despair to a stunned Ruck, who then channeled that raw emotion into a performance that would define his career. But absorbing Hughes's psychological pain took a toll on Ruck that lasted years, as he struggled to separate his own mental health from the character's manufactured depression. The therapeutic process that created Cameron's depth also created a codependent creative relationship that neither man was emotionally equipped to handle. And this psychological manipulation was just one of many ways the production traumatized its participants. Number 15. The school scenes traumatized real students for months. Glenbrook North High School became ground zero for production chaos as Hughes's crew transformed the working educational facility into a movie set, completely disrupting the lives of real students who found their daily routines destroyed by Hollywood invasion. Classes were relocated constantly to accommodate shooting schedules while students struggled to focus on learning, with camera crews documenting their every move and famous actors occupying their classrooms. Many teenagers reported feeling like unwitting extras in their own school lives, unable to act naturally with film equipment surrounding them and their academic schedules falling behind due to constant disruptions. Parent complaints flooded the school board as the educational impact became severe, with students locked in classrooms for hours past normal dismissal times during multiple takes of the principal scenes featuring Jeffrey Jones. The school's agreement to host filming seemed financially beneficial initially, but the educational disruption created lasting negative associations with Hollywood production companies and damaged the school's academic reputation. What seemed like exciting celebrity exposure turned into months of academic chaos that affected students' grades and college preparation during crucial senior year periods. The real-world damage extended far beyond individual schools. Number 14. The parade scene hijacked an entire city and created tourism chaos. The filming of the parade scene in September 1985 transformed Chicago's Von Steuben Day celebration into Hollywood chaos that city officials were completely unprepared to handle. Thousands of parade-goers found themselves unwitting extras as Broderick's performance electrified the crowd, but the production's impact went far beyond what viewers saw on screen. Real parade participants were shoved aside as camera crews invaded their floats, while traffic controllers lost control of the route as enthusiastic spectators flooded the streets trying to get closer to the filming. Police received dozens of complaints about the disruption, while local businesses watched their planned parade promotions get overshadowed by Hollywood production trucks and equipment. The economic impact lasted for weeks as tourism to the parade route exploded overnight, but existing businesses were unprepared for the sudden influx of movie fans seeking to recreate Ferris's adventures. The city had no idea they were agreeing to become a permanent movie destination when they approved the simple filming permits, creating an economic boom they couldn't control or properly capitalize on. But the parade chaos was nothing compared to the cultural institution that nearly suffered permanent damage. Number 13. The museum scenes almost caused a diplomatic art crisis. The Art Institute of Chicago became an unwitting battleground during filming, as Hughes's crew struggled to capture intimate moments while museum curators watched in horror as lighting equipment was positioned dangerously close to priceless paintings. Security guards had to constantly intervene to protect artwork from the chaos of film production, while conservation experts warned that the heat from the lights could damage delicate techniques in irreplaceable masterpieces. The famous scene where Cameron stares at Georges Seurat's A Sunday on La Grande Jatte nearly caused a diplomatic incident when Hughes wanted to film directly in front of the painting. Negotiations stretched for days, with museum board members threatening to shut down production entirely, while specialized cooling equipment and limited shooting hours were required to protect the artwork. The compromise turned what should have been a simple scene into a logistical nightmare that cost the production thousands in overtime fees and damaged the museum's relationship with future film productions. What audiences saw as a beautiful moment of artistic connection was actually the result of tense negotiations between Hollywood commerce and cultural preservation that could have ended very differently. And this artistic battle was just one of many creative conflicts tearing the production apart. Number 12. Jennifer Grey hated her performance so much she stepped back from Hollywood. Fresh off her breakout role in Dirty Dancing, Jennifer Grey arrived on set expecting to create another iconic character in Jeannie Bueller, but instead found herself trapped in what she considered a thankless one-dimensional role as the bitter sister. Behind the scenes, Grey constantly clashed with Hughes over Jeannie's motivations, arguing that the character needed more depth and sympathy than the script provided. The tension erupted during the police station scenes, where Grey refused to play Jeannie as purely vindictive, improvising moments of vulnerability and pain that Hughes ultimately cut from the final film. Grey later described watching the finished film as heartbreaking, feeling that her most nuanced work had been stripped away, leaving only the sharp-edged resentment that audiences remember. The experience soured her relationship with Hughes and contributed to her eventual step back from Hollywood stardom, as she lost faith in directors' willingness to let her create complex characters. What audiences saw as a perfectly pitched performance of sibling rivalry was actually the remnants of a much more complex portrayal that existed only in the deleted scenes and Grey's frustrated memories. But even the film's biggest star was fighting his own secret battle with the role. Number 11. Matthew Broderick almost walked away because Ferris terrified him. Matthew Broderick's hesitation about playing Ferris wasn't about money or scheduling. The character's fourth-wall-breaking confidence felt completely alien to the introspective Broadway actor who worried that playing someone so brazenly charismatic would destroy his serious acting credibility forever. Broderick was terrified that audiences would only see him as the cocky teenager, preventing him from pursuing the dramatic roles that had made him passionate about acting in the first place. The breakthrough came during a private meeting where Hughes revealed the deeper psychology behind Ferris's bravado, confiding that Ferris wasn't actually confident but was desperately performing confidence to mask his own fears about growing up. This revelation transformed Broderick's understanding of the character, but it also created an internal tension that he carried throughout filming, battling between his natural introversion and Ferris's manic extraversion. Every scene became a psychological struggle that created the subtle vulnerability that made the performance legendary, but also left Broderick questioning his own identity as an actor, and that internal struggle led to one of cinema's most famous improvised moments. Number 10. The clarinet scene was pure panic, not comedy genius. The scene in which Ferris attempts to play the clarinet poorly and then tells the camera, "Never had one lesson," was entirely improvised by Matthew Broderick. But what audiences didn't know was that this moment of comedic brilliance was born from genuine terror when Broderick completely forgot his lines during the bedroom scene and was desperately stalling for time while trying to remember the script. The clarinet was a random prop sitting on Ferris's desk, and Broderick grabbed it in desperation, hoping to buy himself a few seconds to recall his dialogue. When he blurted out "never had one lesson," it wasn't planned comedy, but genuine confession about his own musical abilities. Hughes recognized the magic happening and kept the cameras rolling, capturing one of cinema's most natural fourth-wall breaks while Broderick transformed his panic into perfect character work. The crew watched in stunned silence as the actor turned a potential disaster into the film's most quoted moment, proving that sometimes the best performances come from moments of complete professional vulnerability. But this improvised genius couldn't save other cast members from their own professional disasters. Number 9. Ben Stein's economics lecture nearly destroyed his intellectual reputation. Ben Stein's legendary economics lecture, Bueller, was supposed to be a throwaway scene establishing classroom boredom, but instead became cultural shorthand for academic monotony and nearly destroyed Stein's reputation as a serious intellectual. The former Nixon speechwriter and Yale law graduate found himself reduced to a comedy catchphrase overnight, while his academic colleagues were horrified by his association with the film. Speaking engagements dried up as audiences expected comedy rather than serious economic analysis, and the scene that made him famous also pigeonholed him permanently. It took decades for Stein to reclaim his intellectual reputation, but he never escaped the shadow of that droning Bueller call that forced a brilliant policy mind into a career of game show hosting and comedy cameos. The irony wasn't lost on Stein that a scene mocking the irrelevance of academic knowledge had made his own expertise seem irrelevant to the public, who only wanted to hear him repeat his famous monotone delivery. Speaking of reputations destroyed by single scenes, number 8. Sara's Sloane was completely rewritten, crushing her creative vision. Originally envisioned as a punk rocker with attitude and edge, Sloane Peterson underwent a complete character transformation when Hughes met actress Sara and decided her classical beauty demanded a complete rewrite. Sara herself preferred the original punk concept and fought to maintain some of that character's independence, creating creative tension that played out in subtle ways throughout filming. She refused to play Sloane as merely decorative, insisting on dialogue changes that gave her character agency in the trio's adventures, but Hughes often tried to edit out her moments of defiance. Years later, Sara would express frustration that her most famous role reduced her to a pretty face when she had fought to create something more substantial. The performance audiences loved was actually caught between two different visions: Hughes's idealized girlfriend and Sara's more complex interpretation that existed mostly in deleted scenes, and her own frustrated memories of what the character could have been. And that creative frustration was nothing compared to the financial nightmare consuming the production. Number 7. The house interiors were fake and cost more than most films' entire budgets. The stunning modernist home where Cameron's family lived wasn't actually a single location but an elaborate construction project that consumed a massive portion of the film's budget. The exterior shots were filmed at a real house in Highland Park, Illinois, but the interiors were built from scratch on sound stages to accommodate the complex camera movements Hughes envisioned. Production designer John Corso spent months purchasing authentic mid-century modern furniture worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to create the perfect backdrop for Cameron's emotional journey. The attention to detail was obsessive, with every book carefully selected to reflect the family's supposed intellectual pretensions, but the artificial environment created unexpected problems. The lighting never felt natural, and actors struggled to connect emotionally with the fake domestic space, which accidentally reinforced Cameron's sense of living in an emotionally sterile family environment. The beautiful interiors that audiences admired were actually soulless recreations that perfectly captured the character's psychological isolation, but these expensive set pieces were nothing compared to the legal nightmare that almost prevented the film's most iconic scene. Number 6. The Beatles' rights almost killed the parade scene. Securing the music rights for Twist and Shout became a legal nightmare that nearly prevented the parade scene from being filmed, as the Beatles' catalog was notoriously difficult to license and controlled by multiple parties with conflicting interests and astronomical fee demands. Negotiations stretched for months while lawyers battled over synchronization rights, performance royalties, and international distribution permissions. The Beatles' representatives initially refused to allow their music in any teen comedy, viewing the genre as beneath the band's artistic legacy and fearing it would cheapen their cultural impact. Hughes personally flew to London to meet with music executives, screening rough footage to demonstrate how respectfully the song would be used in the parade context. The breakthrough came when Paul McCartney himself saw the parade footage and approved the licensing, but the fees consumed nearly 10% of the entire production budget. The legal complexity was so extreme that some international releases featured different songs entirely, creating multiple versions of the same iconic scene that confused global audiences. And those astronomical music costs were just the beginning of the film's budget disasters. Number 5. The script was written in 6 days during a mental health crisis. John Hughes locked himself away during the 1985 Christmas holiday and emerged with the complete Ferris Bueller screenplay. But this wasn't inspired genius, it was manic desperation from a director battling severe anxiety who used the writing process as therapy. Hughes was processing his own fears about adolescence and mortality, pouring his psychological issues into every scene at a pace that showed in the production chaos that followed. Plot holes emerged during filming that required constant rewrites, while character motivations shifted daily as Hughes continued working through his own mental health struggles. The crew learned to expect completely new dialogue each morning, with entire scenes being scrapped and rebuilt overnight as Hughes's therapeutic writing process continued throughout production. What appeared to be a tightly crafted comedy was actually controlled improvisation held together by Hughes's ability to find coherence in creative chaos, but the 6-day writing marathon established a precedent for rushed production that would plague his later films. The speed of creation became Hollywood legend, but it also revealed the dangerous intersection of mental health struggles and creative pressure in the film industry. Now we're getting to the facts that will completely destroy how you see this movie. Number 4. The pool scene almost didn't happen because it was too dark. The haunting sequence where Cameron lies motionless at the bottom of his family's swimming pool wasn't in the original script but emerged from Alan Ruck's personal struggle with the character's depression and his own battles with anxiety. During a particularly difficult day of filming, Ruck confided in Hughes and asked if Cameron could have a moment of complete emotional breakdown, but Hughes initially resisted, worried the scene would be too dark for a teen comedy. Ruck's passionate argument about mental health representation convinced Hughes to allow the improvisation that was filmed in a single continuous take, with the actor holding his breath underwater while experiencing genuine emotional catharsis. Number 3. The end credits scene was studio-mandated content padding. The famous post-credit sequence where Ferris tells the audience, "You're still here, it's over. Go home," wasn't Hughes's creative choice, but studio executives panicking about the film's runtime and demanding additional content to justify ticket prices. Hughes initially refused, arguing that any addition would damage the film's pacing, but executives threatened to delay the release unless he provided more content. Rather than shoot new scenes with the full cast, Hughes convinced Broderick to film the bathroom sequence during a single afternoon, with the actor improvising most of the dialogue while channeling his frustration with studio interference into Ferris's dismissive attitude toward the audience. Number 2. Matthew Broderick and John Hughes had secret creative battles. Despite their public collaboration appearing seamless, Broderick and Hughes clashed constantly over character interpretation, with the actor frustrated by Hughes's controlling directorial style that contrasted sharply with collaborative theater environments. The tension peaked during bedroom scenes where Hughes insisted on multiple takes to capture every possible emotional variation, while Broderick felt micromanaged and creatively stifled. Their compromise involved private rehearsal sessions where they worked through character motivations away from the crew, but the underlying tension never resolved, with both men later describing their working relationship as professionally respectful, but personally difficult. Number 1. The original ending was so dark that test audiences demanded refunds. Hughes's original ending showed Ferris getting caught and facing real consequences for his elaborate deception, with Principal Rooney successfully exposing his lies and Cameron suffering a complete mental breakdown that required hospitalization. Test audiences found this conclusion so depressing, they literally demanded their money back, forcing Hughes to reshoot the entire final act during expensive pickup sessions that nearly bankrupted the production. Ferris Bueller's Day Off gave us more than just a perfect day in Chicago. It revealed how creative chaos, personal demons, and pure determination can transform production disasters into cinematic gold, but at a cost that nearly destroyed everyone involved. Behind every perfect moment lay weeks of struggle, compromise, and artistic battles that pushed cast and crew to their breaking points, while mechanical failures and studio interference threatened to derail the entire production. The film that taught us to stop and look around once in a while was created by people who couldn't afford to slow down, fighting daily battles against cursed Ferraris, insurance investigations, and their own creative demons. Sometimes the most effortless-looking art requires the most exhausting effort behind the scenes, and these shocking revelations prove that the stories Hollywood doesn't want you to know are always the most fascinating ones. Remember, that perfect day off you see on screen was earned through months of absolute chaos you never imagined.